Good morning. So, I recently finished Serious Sam 4. I took my time with it just because I had a lot of things going on and the game was different, so I wanted to discuss kind of my final thoughts as I play through the last few portions of the last level on kind of double speed just to get through some of it, and highlight some of the things that made the series so much fun to play and how this entry kind of falls into all of that. So, to start with, Serious Sam: The First Encounter came out, and it was kind of a different standout game for that time frame. Not that the game style was different, because there'd been a couple of games that would just throw enemies at you, have secrets, and just be kind of your standard run of, not really standard, but just a run and gun, intense shooter of go blow stuff up. There's no real other plot other than just go shoot. And in the time when Serious Sam came out, it was doing some things that most of the other games hadn't really done to that extent, which was the sheer volume of enemies they threw at you, kind of the crazy variety of enemies that they were throwing at you, and some of the level design was unique to the series in that they gave the level just this immense presence in the game. And that was from the very moment you spawned in there in Egypt and the pyramids are there and you've got this massive area to go through. And at the time, most levels would consider putting most of that world into a skybox and locking you away from it. And while the first game did keep you from going too far around, you still had massive distances to traverse and just insane, especially for the time, amounts of enemies that would just show up and do things. And it really was a fun, crazy, intense game. The story wasn't off the charts amazing, but it was an interesting story. It was fun to play through. The character of Serious Sam is what really kind of sold it, because he's this chauvinistic douchebag guy. I've always kind of thought of him as a PG Duke Nukem, essentially, where Duke Nukem was R/NC-17 rated with everything he was doing and saying. Serious Sam was more like his cool older brother that didn't have to try so hard. And I enjoyed Duke Nukem 3D, so don't get me wrong on that. It just, Serious Sam was a little more, not really achievable. He was just more of a, I guess he was more of a modern character that fit better within the world to a degree. Duke was kind of a douche. Anyway, the first game was a lot of fun. I played through it a couple of times. What really sold the first game to me was the cooperative options, where you could jump in with a group of friends. Even multiplayer was kind of fun. I mean, the characters run around a little goofy-like, but being in that game with all those enemies scaled up cooperatively, it was just totally a different experience to play that game, and that really made it shine. Whereas single player, it was fun, but it was kind of But you get a bunch of your friends in there all just going nuts, doing insane things with modifiers, and it's just an insanely fun game to play through. Now, talking to the background here, and when I mentioned modifiers, if you hadn't guessed, at this point I'd already beaten the game, so I'd come back to replay this last level cheating, just trying to look for different things, explore around, enjoy the scale of it a little bit. And that's the segue I wanted to use to go into Serious Sam: The Second Encounter, which was really the successor to the first encounter. And in the second encounter, they really upped their game a lot and took the game to a new level, from both music, level design, enemies, number of enemies, just the sheer insanity of it, and kind of the way they designed what was happening was really well thought out, and that second game was just awesome. I played that one a good amount of times. I can't even remember how many times I'd gone through. Even if I wasn't really just playing it, I would just load up a level and go blow stuff up, because it was just fun and insane to get in there and have some fun and go nuts. And the second one had just taken everything good about the first and turned the volume up on it with some new designs, new enemies, new weapons, modified options. I remember that's where those harpies were the first time we'd really seen them. You had a better sniper rifle and you could pick them off. And I don't remember the exact level name or exactly where in there it is, but it was somewhere towards the mid. And there's these 3 pyramids that are out there, and you come over the hilltop on a valley, and you have to go down there and find those 3 pyramids to unlock the things to get into the third one. So you go to the left one, then you go to the right one, then you go to the middle one, and that's how you get out of the area. And it was huge, and the time it took to walk that distance was just so insane, and I was blown away by just the scale of it all. And everything worked perfectly, and it was so beautiful the way they'd done the grass and the textures and the colors, and it was just insane. It blew my mind. And then the final level in that game, just, again, they took everything and just amped it up because they didn't do anything crazy with it. They just built this massively long corridor of activity that you had to run through, and just, you would get through each stage and there would just be copious amounts of ammo, and you're mentally taking a breather because you know you're about to just be pummeled, essentially, which is what's happening now, by ridiculous amounts of enemies and activity. And you've got to fight your way to this big boss in the end, and the boss is lava monster, and it's just intense and crazy and fun. And then you throw the co-op aspect on top of that, and again, it's just so much fun to replay. Now in this game, the ending was kind of the same. You had the run up to the enemies, and you come over this hilltop and you play the most insane battle I've ever seen. Let's look at all these enemies and just the distance that it covers. I'm getting shot by some missiles from the base and these guys teleporting in, so I'm kind of looking around for where I'm getting hit because I hadn't run up on the hilltop the first time. But just look into the valley at these two groups of enemies meeting each other, and they're staged in such a way that they won't really progress all that much unless you have an impact on the battlefield. So I just switched over to the cannons this time. The first time I ran fairly quickly around to find the boss and trigger the end game, so I didn't really get to explore it all that much. This time I wanted to see if I could actually get the enemy or my troops to push forward, and I actually did. I got a whole number of these open gates up here at the front lines to have my team caught up to them, so you can actually influence the battle, and if you do it enough, push the enemy back a good distance, which I found just insane. And so I'm just using the cannons and going nuts here, and I've killed hundreds and hundreds of people. So the massive battles to get up here, I've already killed way more than that because these cannonballs are just blasting down here and taking all the guys out. The one thing that kind of kills it, though, is these are really dumb enemies. Like, they've turned AI almost completely off and just have them doing some basic stuff, and they're all running on kind of scripted pathing, so they're not really doing anything like they would have otherwise in the game, which is approach you, look for you. There's some intelligent stuff where you'd kill an enemy and they would go look at the body, and if you were too far away they couldn't find you, and then they would see you as you got closer and attack you. In this case, they're not doing that. So you can see these are my troops that I've helped come up to the front lines, and they're pushing through. And then I decided to see how far this went, so I decided to go all the way down to the portal. After I got a little farther over, I wanted to bring more of my troops in so that when I came back to do the boss, it wouldn't be quite so bad. But wow, the scale of this is just bonkers and mind-numbing and just insane, because I did all of this at a stable FPS. I did not dip into a negative FPS. I had a few drops, I'll admit that, but overall my FPS was very stable at about 30 to 45. Most of the game was spent at about 45 to 60 FPS. So, and again, I'm playing this at 5760 by 1200, so I'm playing this in super ultra wide. I've just trimmed off the side monitors for this, and just the size of this map, because I started I think it took me 45 minutes to fight my way to this battle in all those big areas that I showed coming to this point. And then we get to this point and this massive battlefield, and I only at this moment have run this way towards the portal. I haven't gone back the other way. And it just blew my mind to see how far the engine had come and what they could do. But the more you played it, the more you realized they were cheating in a lot of areas. By simplistic level design, there's not a lot out here for rendering and polygons to deal with, and the enemies are just stupid basic grunts, so they don't do a lot of damage, giving you the opportunity to continue and play. And wow, this is just an amazing technical achievement, and it is absolutely bonkers to play. Those cut corners and those simplistic enemies kind of speak to me about the whole entry of Serious Sam 4, because a lot of this one they did some really awesome things. They had some really cool level design, but it kind of really deviated from Serious Sam itself, which was based more in Egypt, Cairo, the desert areas, and dealing with those old mythic legends. And now we're in Italy dealing with more biblical stuff. And, well, I'm not against that. It just kind of, I don't know, it didn't feel like Serious Sam in that aspect anymore. The one-liners were fun. The story was really probably one of the worst entries out of the series. I don't count Serious Sam 2 or any of the other entries simply because I didn't care for them quite as much. You can see I'm cheating to get back up to fight the boss now. But really, the story was throwaway. The game was very repetitious in that you repeated the same type of gameplay frequently. And I don't mean running and gunning through a bunch of enemies, but like in this one, the amount of times I had to fight massive groups to get up here to the end felt forced. Like the first 4 or 5, not so bad, but after that it just got really, really repetitious where all I'm doing is fighting just massive areas of enemies. Some of the levels did it in a unique way that made it kind of fun and interesting and different, but a bunch of them it was really just recycled activity, and that's kind of how the lead in here was. And while this end battle does some interesting things to differentiate from Serious Sam 2, it really is a lot like Serious Sam 3, which for me was a much better entry. At the end of Serious Sam 3, you have to fight this massive boss, similar to this guy. You have to hit jump pads or jetpacks, I can't remember exactly which because it's been a couple of years. And then you have to throw spears into him, and you really kind of have to figure it out. This one, they've basically highlighted all the targets on him by making them very different colors, so glowing purple. They tell you that you need to grappling hook up there and drop C4 on them to blow them up. So they're really, really telling you how you got to beat this massive guy. And while it is difficult because of the amount of enemies and all the activity going on, they still make it easy enough that it's not that difficult. I remember trying to beat the original one. It took me, in Serious Sam 3, it took me a long time to figure out not only what I needed to do, but how, because he would attack me. I mean, this big guy's just standing here doing nothing. I mean, he's really not engaged at all in the battle, so there's really nothing for me to worry about here. And that's kind of how I beat it the first time. Yeah, I died a couple of times in navigating around it, figuring it all out, avoiding the enemies, but the reality was, with him just standing here, it doesn't make any sense. In Serious Sam 3, Serious Sam 2, and Serious Sam 1, the boss guy was beating the crap out of everything, and you had to dodge his attacks and do all these other things to function. And this, his kneecaps have these stages on them and all that stuff, and it just, again, it feels like it's staged for the purpose of the level, and it doesn't feel like there's a boss or a real challenge to overcome in doing this. And that's just a jump pad, so I don't know, I was a little disappointed in the boss aspect of this. The amount of enemies, the crazy sized battlefield, all the stuff going on, totally amazing and something never really seen on this scale before. And Serious Sam was kind of the king of run and gun insanity, and it still is, and I loved the game, and I'm glad I bought it, and I enjoyed it, but I don't know, I found Serious Sam 3 to be a lot better, and Serious Sam 3 was a lot of fun. I played that a good amount of times with a couple of my friends, just going through. We beat it once, and then we turned on modifiers and we played through it again, and we found the most difficult parts of the map, and we turned enemies on maximum and just played with that and had fun. But like these things that are flying around me, that are shooting me, they're flying through this guy. So why would their weapons not hit him, and why would they fly through him, and why is he not impacting them? The mechs that they added to the game I thought were a unique addition. Kind of poorly implemented, they didn't fit quite right. The level where you get to drive a motorcycle, a lot of fun, I thought it was cool. The map was huge, but there really was no point to it because most of the time you just use the motorcycle and zip across the map. Like, I skipped tons of battles because I could simply outdrive them, so it was kind of a waste. And due to things like that, the map felt a little bit too long. Now he's finally attacking me, which is great, but again, I'm in this mech with all these shots and things able to take him out, and I'm dodging around. I mean, I lost once here. I think I stood stationary too long and got attacked by him. So beating him was really ultimately lackluster, and again, the story was kind of cheap. I forgive them some of the effects that are a little cheaper here, but I don't know, it just felt like aspect of the story was rushed, really rushed, and just they didn't really have a good vision for what they were doing. They just said, let's put the most amount of enemies anybody's ever seen in a video game on it, and that was the purpose of the entire game. So I'm not trying to rag on them too much, but I think that's fair criticism, because while this is a fun game, while I enjoyed it, the enemies and the activity and the maps, they did some unique things, they did some fun things. I really hope when they do a Serious Sam 5, they go back a little farther and give us more of the story, because this one, the bad guy there, he was just a dick. No fun, and it wasn't all that good to fight him or deal with him. Some of the levels were just there for placeholders, which felt like wasted content, and that's what I didn't really like. In Serious Sam 3, everything seemed to progress a lot more organized through the story. You had this objective, you had this purpose, and this point to get to where you needed to be. In this one, I parachuted off a helicopter, or off a plane into the Arctic, and there was no point for the Arctic level. I mean, it didn't progress anything, it didn't improve anything, it was just filler, and that was annoying to me. There was a couple funny one-liners and quips, but again, why am I there? There's no point. And then I don't have to rescue my friends, and everything just kind of writes itself so I can come here and do this big battle, which was just meh. So the story side of it, really the weakest entry. Gameplay, it was fun, it was more of the same. They did have some fun levels, they did have some unique designs, but I think they reused too many aspects of it just for the purpose of cramming more stuff on your screen and repeating big battles. So I think that's where my biggest criticism comes from. But again, Serious Sam is just about insane run and gun. This game did it very well, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So if you're looking for just a crazy run and gun game, this is definitely the one for you. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.